back to part two. I was going to say three, but it probably will be a three by the time I get done with this stupid thing. Anyway, so welcome to part two of the IG installation, and welcome to another episode of Contain This. Well, I'm running into some problems. So if I want to open up, and I do, you know, usually French doors, you only open up one at a time and you use an entryway. And this is going to be a major entryway for the first year or so. So I want the doors to work properly and I don't want to have any problems. And so that's where I run into problems. The way they're designed from the manufacturer is they both doors shut basically at the same time. Now, can you open one and leave one shut? Yes, you can. But the difference is the way there's a seal is a double seal around these doors, and it's kind of almost a locking seal if they're done properly and if they're brand new. So when you go to shut them with the interlocking with the handles, right? Those handles are, believe it or not, leverage handles. I mean, they stick out a little ways, and they when they go into their little groove thing, they actually lock in place and they wedge, okay? And when they come together, they interlock, so to speak, and the doors seal themselves. So that way, when it's on the boat, and believe me, that these containers, no matter how rigid you think they are and how big they are, they still twist and move and flex and stuff. And these front doors have to be so secure in the ocean, going across the ocean with them bouncing around and stuff. They have to be airtight, watertight. Now, when you say watertight, does that mean they can throw them off the side of the boat and go down 6 or 7 meters and be fine? No, not at all, because they'll fill up with water. They're not waterproof, but they are water resistant. So now what I did is I took those levers, those handles off of the front doors. And so I found out when you open both doors at the same time, it opens right up. But when you open one door, it don't want to open. And so that means I had to modify. And I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm going to go and I'll show you what happens. Okay, so I take this door, okay, and I shut it. Oops, my deadbolt's on. Stupid me. Anyway, so I go and shut it. And on the outside, you say, yeah, it looks good, right? Why do you need those big levers? You know, they just lock the door. No, they don't. They wedge it. And so when you go to try to open the door, guess what? No, if you notice, I didn't latch the deadbolt. I did before, but that's when I should. But look how much power it took for me to open that door. So that means I need to modify some things. And so what it is I might modify is, if you can look right here, you'll notice that there's two rubbers. There's the outside rubber and there's an inside rubber. So I wanted to show you this video and do this update with you before I start tearing into the door. I want you to see what the problem was. So the problem wasn't shutting the door. The problem is opening the door. So the problem is if I take a razor blade and these things are real easy to cut. You know, I can just come in here and trim this back just like this. And so they cut pretty easily. But and I'll talk about the lock in a second. Bring this down a little bit. So when I installed, I'm going to get in a little bit further with the lock, but when I installed the lock and deadbolt, I had actually cut this piece of steel out that holds both of them together. So now I only have this outside seal. I don't have this inside seal. So, and the other problem that I have is that the distance I'll take you inside here. The distance between here is not enough for the deadbolt. And it's kind of hard for you to see the latch. There's too much distance here for the locking mechanism, the door, and this. So this needs to be built up. Okay, so let's see if I can open these doors. All right, so that's the issue that I'm having. Okay, so how am I going to remedy that? Well, I think I haven't made a decision completely yet. This is one of those things I've kind of left, sitting on the toilet thinking about it, and driving down the road and thinking how I'm going to fix this or that. So one of the ways I think I'm going to fix it, again, I haven't totally made up my mind, is I'm going to put an angle plate right here. This is 1.5 inches, kind of what we used to put the windows in. Put that in there. And what that's going to do, a couple things. If I lose my seal here, what I'm thinking about doing is when the door comes and shuts like this, there's going to be just like a normal door, and it's going to have a seal on the backside. So now let's talk about the locks. So normal everyday locks do not work. Deadbolts and locks and doorknobs, because this door, I forgot what wood doors are. They're inch and, I don't know, 3/4, inch and 3/8, whatever it is. The thickness of these doors is 2 inches. In fact, the width of the door here is 4 inches, kind of like a 2x4, okay? So the problem is that the thickness of this door is too thick for normal doorknobs. So I went down, of course, remember, I live in Texas, and I live kind of somewhere between Houston and Dallas, and there's a chain store here in Texas called Builder Surplus. Anyway, because they have metal doors, they also sell these, I don't know, these fancy door locks. And so I went, and it was pricey, man. I was like, I priced them today, and they're like $300. I got this one on special. It was for sale. I think it was like $200, $199. But anyway, so you can see it's kind of cool. And the inset, the doorknobs. And so, again, everything I do, you got to fabricate everything, okay? So the instructions say, bore yourself 2 1/8. I don't know why it was 2 1/8. Why did it say 2? I don't know. So the problem was when I bore in the 2 1/8, the edge of the metal. So remember, this is a 2x4, right? And so this edge inside the bore is right at the. I mean, when I bore it, you can see there's a little hole, a little gap right there. When I bore into it, it was right on the metal. I mean, it ground as the bore. I just used a regular, hole saw, multi-purpose, multi-material to go through there. And so in the United States, there's a thing called a back set. And the back set, if you look, this was the guide, okay, the whole guide, the dealio they gave you in the package. And it shows you the hole and where to put the hole and everything. But there's a thing called a back set. And back set, you'll see there's two areas where you could drill, the 2 center points you can put the hole in. And it depends on the back set. Now, what is a back set? I didn't know what a back set was. So a back set is the distance between the front of the locking mechanism and the center in here. And in the United States, we have 2 sizes of back sets. We have 2 3/8 and 2 3/4. Now, I don't know why we have two back sets, two sizes. Why not one? But the 2 3/4 was too much back set for these doors. You'll notice that the handle is set way back here. And that's because it's the one I purchased just happened to be, I didn't know when I purchased it that there was two types of door sets, back steps. And Devin didn't know what it was. But I would get the 2 3/8 if I was to do this again, because it's too far back, okay? But the other thing I didn't like about this, and there's not a whole lot of choices with these locks, and so because you cannot go and buy these locks. Go down a little bit lower here. So you cannot just go down the store and buy these type of locks, because these are for metal doors, not for wooden doors. So the other thing I'll demonstrate here, the instructions say to drill a 1-inch hole. Okay, so right here, this is a 1-inch hole. Well, this is a little bit smaller than a 1-inch hole, and I don't like how that has a big hole. So I can get away with like a 1 7/8 hole, and the same with up here. So I did not drill a 1-inch hole up here, and I use my cool little my fancy drill thing. I love these things. These are cool. I can drill anything I want. But so what I did was, see, I'll take this out real quick. So I just cut a hole in it. You saw on the time lapse. If you look down in there, you'll see the other hole right there, and that's what it is. And look what it's on the end of it. Did you recognize that? Yeah. So what I did was, I just took a bolt, regular standard bolt that you can pick up at the hardware store, and I lopped off the square end there, and voila, I have a deadbolt, a fancy deadbolt. Anyway, so I'm pretty much I've already put the holes in there, screws. I just got to screw it in there, but I wanted to keep that so you guys can see it. It works really good, except, you know, it's too short. You'll see right here, put that in there. Now watch the deadbolt go down. There's the deadbolt. See, it's a little short. So, about a 1/2 inch short. I didn't know what I needed. So, I'll go down to hardware and get another bolt. good cup of coffee in the morning. Quick update. I went ahead and put a door stop, I don't know if you can see it, up on top. It's a angle plate going all the way across, so I welded that in place. And then I went ahead and welded this angle plate right here as a stop, okay? And then I ended up welding an extra plate right here because the two doors are too far apart, and the deadbolt and stuff wasn't connecting to the other solid door, fixed door. So by adding that plate, we were able to do that. And if you remember the last update and some of the stuff that the fast forward time lapse stuff, I went ahead and cut I was debating whether I was going to remove the whole seal. All I did was remove the inner line, and now the door opens up real nice. So I wanted to keep this door as stock as possible. In other words, I didn't want to get away from too much from the original engineering and looks of the decor of it. So just by removing that rubber seal on the inside of the movable door, that was enough to keep it from hanging up. And then I don't think I'm going to put that kick plate down the bottom. I like where it is right now, just that rail across the top. I'm going to put a double tape, seal up there of some type. That way, when the door is shut, they shut up against the seal. And then you'll notice I also fixed those little holes. I just used the rivets, the backside when we cut off the hardware to use the rivets. Now, will those leak? Who knows? I'm not the greatest welder. My welding skills have definitely come along, but man, it's just hard to get in there and weld those little rivets in the backside there. If it does leak, I'll get to it. I'll figure out how to fix it if and when that happens. But I like, if you look at it, see the rivets. I think they look pretty good. I think they'll work fine. Now, here's the real reason why I am doing this update. If you look in the back behind me in this container here, last summer when I first got this container, I got real anxious, and not anxious, but real aggressive and zealous, and went after it with an angle grinder. Instead of the grinder, I actually have a 80 grit flap disc. It kind of looks like this. It's little flaps. I'll tell you what, I really like those flap discs, the 80 grit flap disc. I did that whole container, sanded it down, got all the rust. What happens is the rust, there's two types of rust, right? There's the rust that just kind of coats the top of it. We call it flash rust. And then there's the deep rust that penetrates into the metal and flakes the metal, scaling it. And so those I tried the wire wheels. I don't like the wire wheels at all. I think the sander does it better. And you would think that sander would wear down. I did that whole doggone thing with one wheel. The sander wheel, and the grinder, using like a regular grinding, it takes too much metal off. So that flap just did a really good job, and I've got some footage somewhere I might throw in somewhere on that. But now, why am I talking about this? Because this container here had the old dried up stock paint that's from China, okay? And I don't care what you say, that's paint from China, that is some great paint. That's just that stuff that sticks, and it's anyway. So I took a lot of the oxidation off of it, and then took the flash rust and took the flake scaling off, and then just took a rattle can and just rattled it off. So I'm going to come back and fix this later. But I had no problems. When I'm saying I had no problems was when you get in there and start grinding, you create layers, right? So you got this layer of, you know, paint has a thickness, believe it or not, and some is thicker than other, you know. And so after years, this stuff oxidizes and stuff, and the paint gets thinner and thinner, right? And so I was able to sand it down without creating this depth, right? The metal to the, you know, to this a little bit. Here's the metal and here's the paint. You know, we're talking millimeters, you know, we're talking thousandths of an inch, you know, difference between the two. And so that worked great. It feathered I feathered it really good. So I didn't have this gouge, right? But when I got to these doors here, look real closely. I don't know if you can see it, but there's little gouges, okay? You know, there's these little gouges. Let's see if I can find. Here we go. Here's some good. See the little gouges? I don't know. There's some gouges here. Here's a good example of some gouges. What happened was, this paint on these doors is different than the paint on this container. And this paint on these doors, in fact, there's a difference between the outside and the inside of the paint. The paint on the outside of the doors is real soft and gummy, okay? And it when I put over the grinder with the flap wheel, it didn't sand down the paint. It just kind of rolled the paint. It's kind of like if you took a grinding wheel or something and went over a decal or something, you know, it just kind of burns and melts the decal, and then you know, so it just, because what I did was I took the sanding wheel and I just want to take the oxidation off, and then go ahead and put this. You'll notice there's some silver on it, and that's the primer that I used. And so when I got done with the priming of it, man, it looked terrible. Oh, it had all these gouges in it from using the grinding wheel. I said, what? That never happened over here. Why is it happening here? And the paint it's a different kind of paint. I don't know. It's some aftermarket. You know, after 15, 20 years, who knows if they repainted these doors with a different kind of paint. So anyway, I didn't want to experience that again. I had to fix it. And one of the things that priming does, priming prepares the metal and as you know, the paint to stick, right? So the primer is primarily, it has different properties that attach to the rust and turn the rust into metal, and the primer that I'm using is a metallic urethane enamel. It's designed for, I'll show you a picture up here. I'll put a picture up here for you of what the stuff is. And where I got it, it's expensive, man. It's like $175 a gallon, and it's got metallic chips in it. In fact, if you just a couple days, you let it sit in the can, don't touch it, and all the metal in the paint settles to the bottom, and then you gotta stir it up. But anyway, so it's a pretty thick paint. It's not like a rattle can where you just thin. It's pretty thick, and this paint is the type of paint that they use in bridges. It's an industrial metal paint that bridges and metal buildings, so it's perfect paint for this. So what happened was, as I went to one of these palm sanders, and I thought to myself, you know, Randy, are these any good? This is not going to work. The sander, the angle grinder is the best thing to use, and by God, this thing is awesome. I had wished that I had bought this earlier and actually did this one with this. The angle grinder with the flap does good stuff on the scaling stuff, but this thing, it's got these little holes in here, so all the dust goes into here and keeps it from, it's just a DeWalt, keeps it from that was my biggest problem in the past using one of these things, is the paint and gunk would all, you know, cake up on the sanding. But I went through and sanded these doors after I primed them. So I took the angle grinder, sanded them first, primed them, and then went after this. And so what happens is, when I did the angle grinding, it created these little valleys and dips. So what happens? So you got these valleys and dips, right? So when I took the paint and sprayed the paint over the top of the whole everything, okay, the dips and the mountains, or you know, the highs and the lows of the old paint were all there, right? So then when I took it and sanded it down with a palm sander, I sanded down all the high points, and it sanded all the primer down, right? And then sanded the high point, but all the dips all still had primer in them. And so now we have a nice smooth surface. So I didn't want to put a second coat on here, but it looks like I'm gonna put a second coat on here. So all in all, I'm okay with the type of paint I'm using. I know that there's a bunch of people on the internet that go to the box stores and buy just some, you know, enamel or something and spray it on there. I guess that's okay if you're going for 5-year fix. And then there's some people that spent, you know, I've been watching videos all year long, and some people spent big money buying expensive stuff from like Sherwin-Williams or something. And they said that the paint at the box stores are just as good as Sherwin-Williams. So I don't know. I wanted something better. So we'll see if it's any better. I am beyond happy. Hey, wait a minute. Hey, you gotta do the. How's that done? Something like that. Oh, I'm so happy. It's taken me 6 months to finish these stinking doors. Oh my. That's crazy. What do you think? What do you think? Boy, this is the final update on these IG unit doors. The way it works, the best way to set this up on the paint is you put the primer on, and then you wait until it gets just a little tacky. When you touch it, you shouldn't have any fingerprints. You just little sticky, and then you go and paint it. And you have to let the paint, once you pour the catalyst into the paint, you got to wait about 30 minutes before it activates. And then you got about 4 hours. But the way it's done is the primer and the paint work together as a team. And if you wait too long, then you got to sand the primer down, and then you can paint it when it's sanded, because it's got the rub. You take the gloss or the orange peel off of it. But if you leave it tacky, put the paint on it, it goes, it attaches and cures all at the same time. So let's talk about how I installed the glass. So what I got here was, I don't have any codes here, so I don't have to obey any code, but codes are good to, to abide by. Anything above 18 inches, typically speaking, you got to have tempered glass. So we decided to go with tempered glass because they're doors, right? And so we don't want someone to get hurt if they fall through the glass or something, right? So the glass is insulated, so it's a dual glaze, two glass, and it's got like a bronze, it's a bronze coating glass, not coating, but it's a bronze glass. And I don't know the thickness of the glass. I think it was 7/16 or something like that. They sell glass in single strength, double strength, and then they go into the measurements, 9/16, 7/16, it's a 16th of or something. And then they go 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, whatever. So when I talked to Lone Star, Texas, up in the Fort Worth area, Lone Star IGs is who I went through. Talked to Roger up there. So I told him what I was doing. I just told him, hey, I got a shipping container home. I got these two doors about 36 by 80 inches, and I need, something sturdy. And he set me up. And I said, I'm going to be doing black trim with a real dark smoky gray background. The rest of the thing, he says, I want something kind of dark. I don't want privacy, but I want something dark. He says, I got you set up. So we ordered these glass, pretty pricey. They're about $500 a piece. So, and some change. So, and so what I did, and I'll show you in a minute, we put rubber blocks, little 1/4 inch rubber blocks on the bottom. They're the glass, the IG units are 7/8 thick between the two glasses. And so I put a 1 inch by 2 inch or 3 inch stop at the bottom, a little rubber stop, and set the glass on. And you saw in the video, I had a friend come over and help me set those. And so I went and bought a couple suction cups, professional suction cups from a local glass shop. He had 2 cups that he wasn't using. He bought it from C.R. Lawrence, is another good resource for you guys if you want to buy stuff. And the glass shop guy told me he usually installs this kind of stuff with silicone. I just don't do silicone. I really don't. You can't paint silicone very well. And some of the silicones, the stuff that smells like vinegar, actually will, in the IG unit, there's a rubber, they put like almost a urethane kind of seal all around the glass. What they do is they put 2 pieces of glass, they put a metal divider in between, and then inside that metal divider is actually a bunch of these little beads that absorb moisture. And then then they glue it together. And the glue, if you use like certain kinds of adhesives to put the glass on, it actually eat through that seal on and then you'll have a broken seal, and then you'll have a fogged window if you ever seen those fogged windows. So I used urethane. Back in the day, I used to do auto glass, and we used to use U418, usually a company named Essex used to sell it. I don't know yet if they're still in business or what. It's been 20 years since I've done windshields. And the purpose of using urethane in a windshield is urethane has a real high tensile strength, and it's real gooey and real thick viscosity. In fact, you got to use a special squeeze gun to initiate it, to squeeze it out, because it's just too thick. And if you know anything about windshields and the modern day windshields, you have a windshield and then you have an airbag, okay? And when the airbag explodes or pops open when it hits something, it uses the windshield as a backboard. So when the occupants hit the airbag, it the windshields, if they have a faulty install, windshield will pop out. So you got two things going on with a windshield in a car. When those airbags go pop, they got, you know, it's an explosion is what it is. They got jet fuel kind of stuff inside of it, like like the space shuttle used for the solid boosters. And it's not the same stuff, but I'm just saying it's really explosive. And when those things go off, they create this big pressure differential inside the cab. And if you've ever been into an accident, your ears pop and you can smell the smoke. And anyway, so when that happens, you got two things. You got the airbag hitting the windshield, you got the expansion of air pressure inside the cab, and then you got the occupant hitting it. So those windshields actually take a lot of beating, and it's part of the structural integrity. So why am I saying all this? Because each one of these windows I have here is 107 pounds. And we know this because they calculated it at the glass shop. So being that, and urethane has a lot more tensile strength than silicone, and so you can squish it in and it stays squished, you know. And it does. You'll notice that I set these morning. I don't even have any tape around it or anything because you don't need it. It'll set in there real nicely. And so that's the story in the urethane, and I'll show you. Let me take you over here, and I'll give you a rundown on the stuff that we used here. So you'll notice in the video that I also primed it. So now urethanes, this is the urethane I use. U428, and I don't know, I used to use U418. I'm assuming that was 20 years ago, so I'm assuming they've improved. This is actually made by DuPont. Some of the stuff, a lot of this is urethane is probably a generic urethane, and they just resell it and repackage it, so to speak. So I just went to a glass shop that does windshields, and I said, hey man, sell me, some tubes of urethane. They said, sure, no problem. And so there's two types of urethane, kind of. There's more than that, but kind of, generally speaking. There's either primer or primerless. Okay, this is primerless, and so when you ask the auto glass guy, is this primerless or primer? If he says it's primerless, you can go ahead and just make the application and go with it. But I decided to go one step further. It doesn't hurt to put a primer on it, and this is a primer. It's got, you just go down the pinch weld and put it on there. Also, so I don't know if this is good or bad primer. Usually bought it in a bottle, and you had a little cotton swab, and you swab it on there. Back in the day, they got it differently now, so I don't know. I used two of these, one and a half. And so the way this urethane works, you gotta pop off back here, and then you gotta inside, you gotta pop that seal, and then I cut it, and I actually can't really see it, but I cut a V in here. So as you saw in the video, what I did was I just ran about 3/8 or so bead, a V bead, and when we install the glass, we just push it on there and we're good to go. This is the squirt gun that I used. It is not, you can't go down to Home Depot, can't go, or any of the box stores and get one of these. These are a special order. It's a high leverage, I guess you would call it, because you're never going to get the urethane. The urethane is so thick, you're never going to be able to do it. So you got to go step up. And they also make the battery powered ones. You stick a battery in there, that's pretty good too. But how much glass you're going to install, right? So I had this back. I've had this for 30 some years. This is what I used when I used to do auto glass back in the day. The suction cups, I don't know what brand it is, WPG. They're just You put them on there and you pump them up, and they're good. So I spent 75, 80 bucks for these, but they're well worth it, man. There's no way you're gonna install a 100-pound glass without these, so I bought 2 of them. They came from C.R. Lawrence, but I bought them from the glass shop. So anyway, I don't know if you can see it down here. There's the little blocks. So I put down there. So I think that's about it. I don't know much more to tell you. You know, other than I'm so happy I've got these things done. So I got to clean them up, put some razor blade to them, and clean them up a little bit, and we're good to go. So thank you for watching. I hope you learned something about these IG units, installing those. I'm really happy with these doors. They shut really nicely, real quiet shutting. Open it up. Got a deadbolt. So I am really ecstatic. Turned out, you know, you get this vision, right, of what you want. And so that's totally my vision. I guess one other thing I could talk about is I did not put, if you look real closely, I did not put any kind of seal, like a molding or anything. I left it raw. I mean, that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted. I envisioned a totally clean edge along there with no molding or anything. You know, I could take a bead of urethane and run it down there and then glaze it. I could, take a razor blade and square it. I can do that later if I want to, but I like them just the way they are. I think I envision them good. So, thank you again for enduring this process. I hope this is helpful. If you want to do something like this, you can always ask questions. And you know what? I'm going to tell you something right now. All these DIYer guys that are doing YouTube and the YouTubers always say, subscribe, and if you like the button, hit the button, and ravishing like button. Come on, guys. You'll never hear me say, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It's a no-brainer, right? If you like the video, hit the like button. If you want to subscribe, I'm not making any money on this YouTube. I'm just having fun doing this. So anyway, I just had to say that. Ciao. I'm going to go finish my laundry. I get to move in here pretty soon. It ain't finished on the inside, but now we're good. The foam guy is coming tomorrow, so we'll be good. Ciao.